HEDDA GABLER by Henrik Ibsen. It is September 1891. The spacious, tastefully furnished living room of the villa of George Tesman and his new bride, Hedda. Act 1. Aunt Julia is listening at the door of her nephew's bedroom.
Upon my word, I don't believe they are stirring yet.
Berta, the housekeeper, is attending.
I told you so, miss. Remember how late the steamboat got in last night? And then, when they got home, good Lord, what a lot the young mistress had to unpack before she could get to bed.
Well, well, let them have their sleep out. But let us see that they get a good breath of fresh morning air when they do appear.
Julia goes to the door leading out to the garden and throws it open.
I declare, there isn't a bit of room left. I think I'll put these flowers down here, miss.
She places them on the piano.
So you've got a new mistress now, my dear Berta. Heaven knows it was a wrench to me to part with you.
And do you think it wasn't hard for me too, miss? After all the blessed years I'd been with you and Miss Rena.
We must make the best of it, Berta. There was nothing else to be done. George can't do without you, you see. He absolutely can't. He has had you to look after him ever since he was a little boy.
Oh, but Miss Julia, I can't help thinking of Miss Rena, lying helpless at home there. Poor thing. And with only that new girl, too. She'll never learn to take proper care of an invalid.
Oh, I shall manage to train her. And of course you know I shall take most of it upon myself. You mustn't be uneasy about my poor sister, my dear Berta.
Well, but there's another thing, miss. I'm so mortally afraid I shan't be able to suit the young mistress.
Oh, well, just at first there might be one or two things.
Most like she'll be terrible grand in her ways.
Well, you can't wonder at that. General Gabler's daughter? Think of the sort of life she was accustomed to in her father's time. Don't you remember how we used to see her riding down the road along with the general, in that long black habit and with feathers in her hat?
Yes, indeed, I remember well enough. But good Lord, I should never have dreamt in those days that she and Master George would make a match of it.
Nor I. But by the by, Berta, while I think of it, in future you mustn't say Master George. You must say Dr. Tesman.
Yes, the young mistress spoke of that too, last night, the moment they set foot in the house. Is it true then, miss?
Yes, indeed it is. Only think, Berta, some foreign university has made him a doctor, while he has been abroad, you understand. I hadn't heard a word about it until he told me himself upon the pier.
Well, well, he's clever enough for anything, he is. But I didn't think he'd have gone in for doctoring people.
No, it's not that sort of doctor he is. But let me tell you, we may have to call him something still grander before long.
You don't say so. What can that be, miss?
Wouldn't you like to know? If my poor brother could only look up from his grave now and see what his little boy has grown into. But bless me, Berta, why have you done this? Taken the chintz covers off all the furniture?
The mistress told me to. She can't abide covers on the chairs, she says.
Are they going to make this their everyday sitting room, then?
Yes, that's what I understood from the mistress. Master George, the doctor, he said nothing.
George Tesman enters from the bedroom, humming to himself and carrying an unstrapped empty portmanteau. He wears spectacles and is somewhat carelessly dressed in comfortable indoor clothes.
Good morning, George.
Aunt Julia, dear Aunt Julia, come all this way so early, eh?
Why, of course. I had to come and see how you were getting on.
In spite of your having no proper night's rest.
Oh, that makes no difference to me.
Well, I suppose you got home all right from the pier, eh?
Yes, quite safely, thank goodness. Judge Brack was good enough to see me right to my door.
We were so sorry we couldn't give you a seat in the carriage, but you saw what a pile of boxes Hedda had to bring with her.
Yes, she had certainly plenty of boxes.
I shall go in and see if there's anything I can do for the mistress.
No, thank you, Berta, you needn't. She said she would ring if she wanted anything.
Very well.
But look here, take this portmanteau with you.
I'll put it in the attic.
Fancy, Auntie, I have the whole of that portmanteau chucked full of copies of documents. You wouldn't believe how much I have picked up from all the archives I have been examining. Curious old details that no one has had any idea of.
Yes, you don't seem to have wasted your time on your wedding trip, George.
No, that I haven't. But do take off your bonnet, Auntie. Look here, let me untie the strings, huh?
Well, well, this is just as if you were still at home with us.
Why, what a gorgeous bonnet you've been investing in.
I bought it on Hedda's account.
On Hedda's account, there?
Yes, so that Hedda needn't be ashamed of me if we happen to go out together.
You always think of everything, Aunt Julia. And now, look here. Suppose we sit comfortably on the sofa and have a little chat till Hedda comes.
They seat themselves.
What a delight it is to have you again as large as life before my very eyes, George. My George, my poor brother's own boy.
And it's a delight for me, too, to see you again, Aunt Julia. You who have been father and mother in one to me.
Oh yes, I know you will always keep a place in your heart for your old aunts.
And what about Aunt Rena? No improvement, eh?
Oh no, we can scarcely look for any improvement in her case, poor thing. There she lies, helpless as she has lain for all these years. But heaven grant I may not lose her yet a while, for if I did, I don't know what I should make of my life, especially now that I haven't you to look after any more.
There.
And to think that here you are a married man, and that you should be the one to carry off Hedda Gabler, the beautiful Hedda Gabler. Only think of it, she that was so beset with admirers.
Yes, I fancy I have several good friends about town who would like to stand in my shoes, huh?
And then this fine, long wedding tour you have had. More than 5, nearly 6 months.
Well, for me it has been sort of a tour of research as well. I have had to do so much grubbing among old records, and to read no end of books, too, Auntie.
Oh yes, I suppose so. But listen now, George. Have you nothing special to tell me?
As to our journey?
Yes.
No, I don't know of anything except what I have told you in my letters. I had a doctor's degree conferred on me, but that I told you yesterday.
Yes, you did. But what I mean is, haven't you any expectations?
Expectations?
Why, you know, George. I'm your old auntie.
Why, of course, I have expectations.
Oh,
I have every expectation of being a professor one of these days.
oh yes, a professor.
Indeed, I may say I am certain of it. But, my dear Auntie, you know all about that already.
Yes, of course I do. You are quite right there. But we were talking about your journey. It must have cost a great deal of money, George.
Well, you see, my handsome traveling scholarship went a good way.
But I can't understand how you could have made it go far enough for 2.
No, that's not easy to understand.
And especially traveling with a lady. They tell me that makes it ever so much more expensive.
Yes, of course, it makes it a little more expensive. But Hedda had to have this trip, Auntie. She really had to. Nothing else would have done.
No, I suppose not. A wedding tour seems to be quite indispensable nowadays. But tell me now, have you gone thoroughly over the house yet?
Yes, you may be sure I have. I have been afoot ever since daylight.
And what do you think of it all?
I'm delighted, quite delighted. Only I can't think what we are to do with the 2 empty rooms between this inner parlor and Hedda's bedroom.
Oh, my dear George, I dare say you may find some use for them in the course of time.
Why, of course, you are right, Aunt Julia. You mean as my library increases, eh?
Yes, quite so, my dear boy. It was your library I was thinking of.
I'm especially pleased on Hedda's account. And often, before we were engaged, she said she would never care to live anywhere but in Secretary Fox Villa.
Yes, it was very lucky that this house should come into the market just after you had started.
Yes, Aunt Julia, the luck was on our side, wasn't it?
But the expense, my dear George, you will find it very expensive.
Oh, frightfully. How much do you think in round numbers, huh? Oh, I can't even guess until all the accounts come in. Well, fortunately, Judge Brack has secured the most favorable terms for me, so he said in a letter to Hedda.
Yes, don't be uneasy, my dear boy. Besides, I have given security for all the furniture and all the carpets.
Security? You? My dear Aunt Julia, what sort of security could you give?
I have given a mortgage on our annuity.
Wait! On your and Aunt Bina's annuity?
Yes, I knew of no other plan, you see.
Have you gone out of your senses, Auntie? Your annuity? It's all that you and Aunt Rena have to live upon.
Don't get so excited about it. It's only a matter of form, you know. Judge Brack assured me of that. It was he that was kind enough to arrange the whole affair for me. A mere matter of form, he said.
Yes, that may all be very well, but nevertheless.
You will have your own salary to depend upon now. And good heavens, even if we did have to pay up a little, to eke things out a bit at the start, why, it would be nothing but a pleasure to us.
Oh, Auntie, will you never be tired of making sacrifices for me?
Have I any other happiness in this world except to smooth your way for you, my dear boy? You who have had neither father or mother to depend on? And now we have reached the goal, George. Things have looked black enough for us sometimes, but thank heaven, now we have nothing to fear.
Yes, it is really marvelous how everything has turned out for the best.
And for the people who opposed you, who wanted to bar the way for you, they have fallen, George. Your most dangerous rival, his fall was the worst, and now he has to lie on the bed he has made for himself. Poor misguided creature.
Have you heard anything of Ireland? Since I went away, I mean.
Only that he is said to have published a new book.
What? Eilert Lomborg? Recently, huh?
Yes, so they say. Heaven knows whether it can be worth anything. When your new book appears, that will be another story, George. What is it to be about?
It will deal with the domestic industries of Brabant during the Middle Ages.
Fancy, to be able to write on such a subject as that.
However, it may be some time before the book is ready. I have all these collections to arrange first, you see.
Yes, collecting and arranging. No one can beat you at that. There you are, my poor brother's own son.
I am looking forward eagerly to setting to work at it, especially now that I have my own delightful home to work in.
And, most of all, now that you have got the wife of your heart, my dear George.
Oh, yes, yes, Aunt Julia. Hedda. She is the best part of it all. I believe I hear her coming, eh?
Hedda enters from the bedroom. She is dressed in a tasteful, somewhat loose-fitting morning gown.
Good morning, my dear Hedda, good morning, and a hearty welcome.
Good morning, dear Miss Tesman. So early a call, but is kind of you.
Well, has the bride slept well in her new home?
Oh, yes, thanks, passably.
Passably? Come, that's good, Hedda. You were sleeping like a stone when I got up.
Of course, one has always to accustom oneself to new surroundings, Miss Tesman. Little by little. Oh, there, the servant has gone and opened the veranda door and let in a whole flood of sunshine.
Well, then we shall shut it.
No, not that. Tesman, please draw the curtains. That will give a softer light.
All right. There now, Hedda, now you have both shade and fresh air.
Yes, fresh air we certainly must have with all these stacks of flowers. But won't you sit down, Miss Tesman?
No, thank you. Now that I have seen that everything is all right here, thank heaven, I must be getting home again. My sister is longing for me, poor thing.
Give her my very best love, Auntie, and say that I shall look in and see her later in the day.
By the by, George, I had almost forgot. I have something here for you.
What is it, Auntie, eh?
She produces a flat parcel wrapped in newspaper and hands it to him.
Look here, my dear boy.
Well, I declare, have you really saved them for me, Aunt Julia? Hedda, isn't this touching, eh?
Well, what is it?
My old morning shoes, my slippers.
Indeed. I remember you often spoke of them while we were abroad.
Yes, I miss them terribly. Now you shall see them, Hedda.
Thanks. I really don't care about it.
Only think, ill as she was, Aunt Rena embroidered these for me. Oh, you can't think how many associations cling to them.
Scarcely for me.
Of course not for Hedda, George.
Well, but now that she belongs to the family, I thought...
We shall never get on with this servant, Tessman.
Not get on with Berta?
Why, dear, what puts that in your head, Ham?
Look here. She has left her old bonnet lying on the chair.
Why, Hedda.
Just fancy if anyone should come and see it.
But Hedda, that's Aunt Julia's bonnet.
Is it?
Yes, indeed, it's mine. And what's more, it's not old, Madam Hedda.
I really did not look closely at it, Miss Tessman.
Let me tell you, it's the first time I have worn it. The very first time.
And a very nice bonnet it is, too. Quite a beauty.
Oh, it's no such great thing, George. My parasol. Ah, here. For this is mine, too. Not Berta's.
A new bonnet and a new parasol. Only think, Hedda.
Very handsome indeed.
Yes, isn't it, But, Auntie, take a good look at Hedda before you go. See how handsome she is.
Oh, my dear boy, there's nothing new in that. Hedda was always lovely.
Yes, but have you noticed what splendid condition she is in? How she has filled out on the journey?
Oh, do be quiet.
Filled out?
Of course. You don't notice it so much now that she has that dress on. But I, who can see...
Oh, you can't see anything.
It must be the mountain air in Tyrol.
I'm exactly as I was when I started.
So you insist, but I'm quite certain you are not. Don't you agree with me, Auntie?
Julia takes Hedda's head between her hands.
Hedda is lovely. Lovely, lovely. God bless and preserve Hedda Tessman. For George's sake.
Oh, let me go.
I shall not let a day pass without coming to see you.
No, you won't, will you, Auntie?
Goodbye. Goodbye.
She exits.
What are you looking at, Hedda?
I'm only looking at the leaves. They are so yellow, so withered.
Well, you see, we are well into September now.
Yes, to think of it. Already in September.
Don't you think Aunt Julia's manner was strange, dear? Almost solemn. Can you imagine what was the matter with her,
I scarcely know her, you see. Is she not often like that?
No, not as she was today.
Do you think she was annoyed about the bonnet?
Oh, scarcely at all. Perhaps a little, just at the moment.
But what an idea, to pitch her bonnet about in the drawing room. No one does that sort of thing.
Well, you may be sure Aunt Julia won't do it again.
In any case, I shall manage to make my peace with her.
Yes, my dear. Good, Hedda, if you only would.
When you call this afternoon, you might invite her to spend the evening here.
Yes, that I will. And there's one thing more you could do that would delight her heart.
What is that?
If you could only prevail on yourself to call her for my sake, Hedda.
No, Desmond. You really mustn't ask that of me. I have told you so already. I shall try to call her aunt. And you must be satisfied with that.
I only think now that you belong to the family, you...
I can't in the least see why.
Is there anything the matter with you, Hedda, huh?
I'm only looking at my old piano. It doesn't go at all well with the other things.
The first time I draw my salary, we'll see about exchanging it.
No exchanging. I don't want to part with it. Suppose we put it there in the inner room and then get another here in its place. When it's convenient, I mean.
Yes, of course we could do that.
These flowers were not here last night when we arrived.
Aunt Julia must have brought them for you.
A visiting card. Shall return later in the day. Can you guess whose card it is?
No, whose, sir?
The name is Mrs. Elfstead.
Is it really Sheriff Elfstead's wife? Miss Ricing, that was.
Exactly. The girl with the irritating hair that she was always showing off. An old flame of yours, I've been told.
Oh, that didn't last long. And it was before I met you, Hedda. But fancy her being in town.
It's odd that she should call upon us. I have scarcely seen her since we left school.
I haven't seen her either for heaven knows how long. I wonder how she can endure to live in such an out-of-the-way hole, huh?
Tell me, Tesman, isn't it somewhere near there that Eilert Lovborg is living?
Yes, he is somewhere in that part of the country.
Berta enters.
That lady, ma'am, that brought some flowers a little while ago is here again. The flowers you have in your hand, ma'am.
Ah, is she? Well, please show her in.
Mrs. Elvsted enters.
How do you do, my dear Mrs. Elvsted? It's delightful to see you again.
Yes, it's a very long time since we met.
And we too, huh?
Thanks for your lovely flowers.
Oh, not at all. I would have come straight here yesterday afternoon, but I heard that you were away.
Have you just come to town, huh?
I arrived yesterday about midday. Oh, I was quite in despair when I heard that you are not at home.
In despair? How so?
Why, my dear Miss Rising. I mean Mrs. Elvsted.
I hope that you are not in any trouble.
Yes, I am. And I don't know another living creature here that I can turn to.
Come, let us sit down on the sofa.
Oh, I'm too restless to sit down.
Oh, no, you're not. Come here.
Well, what is of Mrs. Elvsted?
Has anything particular happened to you at home?
Yes, and no. Oh, I am so anxious you should not misunderstand me.
Then your best plan is to tell us the whole story, Mrs. Elvsted.
I suppose that's what you have come for, huh?
Yes, of course it is. Well, then, I must tell you. If you don't already know that Eilert Lovborg is in town, too.
Lovborg?
Has Eilert Lovborg come back? Fancy that, Hedda.
Well, I hear it.
He has been here for a week already. Just fancy a whole week in this terrible town alone, with so many temptations on all sides.
But, my dear Mrs. Elvsted, how does he concern you so much?
He was the children's tutor.
Your children's?
My husband. I had none.
Your stepchildren's, then?
Yes.
Then was he, I don't know how to express it, was he regular enough in his habits to be fit for the post, huh?
For the past 2 years his conduct has been irreproachable.
Has it indeed? Fancy that, Hedda.
I hear it.
Perfectly irreproachable, I assure you, in every respect. But all the same, now that I know he is here, in this great town, and with a large sum of money in his hands, I can't help being in mortal fear for him.
Why did he not remain where he was, with you and your husband, huh?
After his book was published, he was too restless and unsettled to remain with us.
Yes, by the by, Aunt Julia told me he has published a new book.
Yes, a big book dealing with the march of civilization, in broad outline, as it were. It came out about a fortnight ago, and since it has sold so well, and been so much read, and made such a sensation.
Has it indeed? It must be something he has had lying by since his better days.
Long ago, you mean?
Yes.
No, he has written it all since he has been with us, within the last year.
Isn't that good news, Hedda? Think of that.
Ah, yes, if only it would last.
Have you seen him here in town?
No, not yet. I have had the greatest difficulty in finding out his address, but this morning I discovered it at last.
It seems to me a little odd of your husband,
Of my husband what?
that he should send you to town on such an errand, that he does not come himself and look after your friend.
Oh, no, my husband has no time. And besides, I had some shopping to do.
Ah, that is a different matter.
And now I beg and implore you, Mr. Tesman, receive Eilert Lovborg kindly if he comes to you, and that he is sure to do. You see, you were such great friends in the old days, and then you are interested in the same studies, the same branch of science, so far as I can understand.
We used to be, at any rate.
That is why I beg you so earnestly that you too, will keep a sharp eye upon him. Oh, you will promise me that, Mr. Tesman, won't you?
With the greatest of pleasure, Mrs. Riesling.
Elvsted.
Elvsted, I assure you I shall do all I possibly can for Eilert. You can rely on me.
Oh, how very, very kind of you. Thanks. Thanks. You see, my husband is so very fond of him.
You ought to write him, Tesman. Perhaps he might not care to come to you of his own accord.
Well, perhaps it would be the right thing to do, Hedda, eh?
And the sooner the better. Why not at once?
Oh, if you only would.
I'll write this moment. Have you his address, Mrs. Elfsted?
Yes. Here it is.
Good, good. Then I'll go in. By the by, my slippers. Oh, here.
Be sure you write him a cordial, friendly letter, and a good long one, too.
Yes, I will.
But please don't say a word to show that I have suggested it.
No, how could you think I would, huh?
There. We have killed 2 birds with 1 stone.
What do you mean?
Could you not see that I wanted him to go?
Yes, to write the letter.
And that I might speak to you alone.
About the same thing.
Precisely.
But there is nothing more, Mrs. Tesman. Absolutely nothing.
Oh, yes, there is. There is a great deal more. I can see that. Sit here, and we'll have a cozy, confidential chat.
But, my dear Mrs. Tesman, I was really on the point of going.
Oh, you can't be in such a hurry. Well, now tell me something about your life at home.
Oh, that is just what I care least to talk about.
But to me, my dear? Why weren't we schoolfellows?
Yes, but you were in the class above me. Oh, how dreadful afraid of you I was then.
Afraid of me?
Yes, dreadfully. For when we met on the stairs, you used always to pull my hair.
Did I really?
Yes, and once you said you would burn it off my head.
Oh, that was all nonsense, of course.
Yes, but I was so silly in those days. And since then, too, we have drifted so far apart from each other. Our circles have been so entirely different.
Well, then, we must try to drift together again. Now, at school, we called each other by our Christian names.
No, I am sure you must be mistaken.
No, not at all. I can remember quite distinctly. So now we are going to renew our old friendship. There now, you must call me Hedda.
Oh, how good and kind you are. I am not used to such kindness.
There. And I shall call you, as I did in the old days, my dear Thora.
My name is Thea.
Why, of course, I mean Thea. So you are not accustomed to goodness and kindness, Thea? Not in your own home?
Oh, if only I had a home. But I haven't any. I have never had a home.
I almost suspected as much.
Yes.
I don't quite remember. Was it not as a housekeeper that you first went to Mr. Elstead?
I really went as governess, but his wife, his late wife, was an invalid and rarely left her room, so I had to look after the housekeeping as well.
And then, at last, you became mistress of the house?
Yes, I did.
Let me see. About how long ago was that?
My marriage?
Yes.
5 years ago.
To be sure, it mustn't be that.
Oh, those 5 years, or at all events the last 2 or 3 of them. Well, if you could only imagine and understand.
Eilert Lovborg has been in your neighborhood about 3 years, hasn't he?
Eilert Lovborg? Yes, he has.
Had you known him before, in town here?
Scarcely at all, I mean. I knew him by name, of course.
But you saw a good deal of him in the country.
Yes, he came to us every day. You see, he gave the children lessons, for in the long run I couldn't manage it all myself.
No, that's clear. And your husband? I suppose he is often away from home.
Yes, being sheriff, you know, he has to travel about a good deal in his district.
There, my poor sweet Thea. Now you must tell me everything, exactly as it stands.
Well, then you must question me.
What sort of a man is your husband, Thea? I mean, you know, in everyday life. Is he kind to you?
I am sure he means well in everything.
I should think he must be altogether too old for you. There is at least 20 years difference between you, is there not?
Yes, that is true, too. Everything about him is repellent to me. We have not a thought in common. We have no single point of sympathy, he and I.
But is he not fond of you all the same? In his own way?
Oh, I really don't know. I think he regards me simply as a useful property. And then it doesn't cost much to keep me. I am not expensive.
That is stupid of you.
It cannot be otherwise. Not with him. I don't think he really cares for anyone but himself, and perhaps a little for the children.
And for Eilert Lovborg, Thea?
For Eilert Lovborg? What puts that into your head?
Well, my dear, I should say when he sends you after him all the way to town. And besides, you said so yourself to Tesman.
Did I? Yes, I suppose I did. No, I may just as well make a clean breast of it all at once, for it must all come out in any case.
Why, my dear Fair?
Well, to make a long story short, my husband did not know that I was coming.
What? Your husband didn't know it?
No, of course not. For that matter, he was away from home himself. He was traveling. Oh, I could bear it no longer, Hedda. I couldn't indeed, so utterly alone as I should have been in future.
Well, and then?
So I put together some of my things, what I needed most, as quietly as possible, and then I left the house.
Without a word?
Yes, and took the train to town.
Why, my dear good Thea, to think of you daring to do it.
What else could I possibly do?
But what do you think your husband will say when you go home again?
Back to him.
Of course.
I shall never go back to him again.
Then you have left your home for good and all.
Yes, there's nothing else to be done.
But then, to take flight so openly.
Oh, it's impossible to keep things of that sort secret.
But what do you think people will say of you, Thea?
They may say what they like for aught I care. I have done nothing but what I had to do.
And what are your plans now? What do you think of doing?
I don't know yet. I only know this, that I must live here, where Eilert Lovborg is, if I am to live at all.
My dear Thea, how did this friendship between you and Eilert Lovborg come about?
Oh, it grew up gradually. I gained a sort of influence over him.
Indeed.
He gave up his old habits, not because I asked him to, for I never dared do that, but of course he saw how repulsive they were to me, and so he dropped them.
Then you have reclaimed him, as the saying goes, my little Thea.
So he says himself at any rate, and he, on his side, has made a real human being of me, taught me to think and to understand so many things.
Did he ever give you lessons too, then?
No, not exactly lessons. But he talked to me, talked about such an infinity of things, and then came the lovely, happy time when we began to share in his work, when he allowed me to help him.
Oh, he did he?
Yes, he never wrote anything without my assistance.
You were two good comrades, in fact.
Comrades? Yes, fancy, Hedda. That is the very word he used. Oh, I ought to feel perfectly happy, and yet I cannot, for I don't know how long it will last.
Are you no surer of him than that?
A woman's shadow stands between Eilert Lovborg and me.
Who can that be?
Someone he knew in his past. Someone he has never been able wholly to forget.
What has he told you about this?
He has only once, quite vaguely, alluded to it.
Well, and what did he say?
He said that when they parted, she threatened to shoot him with a pistol.
Oh, nonsense. No one does that sort of thing here.
No, and that was why I think it must have been that red-haired singing woman whom he once...
Yes, very likely. For I remember they used to say of her that she carried loaded firearms.
Oh, then of course it must have been she. And now just fancy, Hedda. I hear that this singing woman, that she is in town again. Oh, and I don't know what to do.
Hush. Here comes Tesman. Thea. All this must remain between you and me.
Yes, yes, for heaven's sake.
George Tesman enters with a letter in his hand.
There now. The episode is finished.
And now Mrs. Elstead is just going. Wait a moment. I'll go with you to the garden gate.
Do you think Berta could post the letter, Hedda dear?
I will tell her to.
Berta enters.
Judge Brack wishes to know if Mrs. Tesman will receive him.
Yes, Ask Judge Brack to come in. And look here, put this letter in the post.
Yes, man.
Berta opens the door for Judge Brack and exits. Brack is a man of 45, thick-set and well-built. He enters holding his hat in his hand and bowing.
May one venture to call so early in the day?
Of course one may.
You are welcome here at any time. Judge Brack, Miss Rising.
Oh,
Ah, delighted.
it's nice to have a look at you by daylight, Judge.
So you find me altered?
A little younger, I think.
Thank you so much.
But what do you think of Hedda, huh? Doesn't she look flourishing? She has actually...
Oh, do leave me alone. You haven't thanked Judge Brack for all the trouble he has taken.
Oh, nonsense. It was a pleasure to me.
Yes, you are a good friend indeed. But here stands Thea, all impatient to be off. So, au revoir, Judge. I shall be back again presently.
Hedda and Mrs. Elfstead exit.
Well, is your wife tolerably satisfied?
Yes, we can't thank you sufficiently. Of course she talks of a little rearrangement here and there, and one or two things are still wanting. You shall have to buy some additional trifles.
Indeed.
But we won't be troubling you about these things. Hedda says she herself will look after what is wanting. Shan't we sit down, huh?
Thanks. For a moment. There is something I wanted to speak to you about, my dear Tessman.
Indeed. Ah, I understand. I suppose it's the serious part of the frolic that is coming now, huh?
Oh, the money question is not so very pressing. Though, for that matter, I wish we had gone a little more economically to work.
But that would never have done, you know. Think of Hedda, my dear fellow. You who know her so well. I couldn't possibly ask her to put up with a shabby style of living.
No, that is just the difficulty.
And then, fortunately, it can't be long before I receive my appointment.
Well, you see, such things are often apt to hang fire for a long time.
Have you heard anything definite,
Nothing exactly definite. But by the by, I have one piece of news for you.
Well,
Your old friend, Eilert Lovborg, has returned to town.
I know that already.
Indeed. How did you learn it?
From that lady who went out with Hedda.
Really? What was her name? I didn't quite catch it.
Mrs. Elfstead.
Aha. Sheriff Elfsted's wife? Of course, he has been living up in their region.
And fancy, I'm delighted to hear that he is quite a reformed character.
So they say.
And then he has published a new book, huh?
Yes, indeed he has.
And I hear it has made some sensation.
Quite an unusual sensation.
Fancy. Isn't that good news? A man with such extraordinary talent. I felt so grieved to think that he had gone irretrievably to ruin.
That was what everybody thought.
But I cannot imagine what he will take to now. How in the world will he be able to make his living, huh?
During the last word, Hedda had entered by the hallway door.
Tessman is forever worrying about how people are going to make their living.
Well, you see, dear, we are talking about poor Eilert Lovborg.
Oh, indeed. What is the matter with him?
Well, no doubt he has run through all his property long ago, and he can scarcely write a new book every year, huh? So I really can't see what is to become of him.
Perhaps I can give you some information on that point.
Indeed.
You must remember that his relations have a good deal of influence.
Oh, his relations, unfortunately, have entirely washed their hands of him.
At one time, they called him the hope of the family.
At one time, yes, but he has put an end to all that.
Who knows? I hear they have reclaimed him up at Sheriff Elfstead.
And then this book that he has published.
Well, I hope to goodness they may find something for him to do. I have just written to him. I asked him to come and see us this evening, Hedda dear.
But my dear fellow, you are booked for my bachelor's party this evening. You promised on the pier last night.
Had you forgotten, Tessman?
Yes, I had utterly forgotten.
But it doesn't matter, for you may be sure he won't come.
What makes you think that, eh?
My dear Tessman, and you too, Mrs. Tessman, I think I ought not to keep you in the dark about something that
concerns Eilert?
both you and him.
Well, my dear Judge, out with it.
You must be prepared to find your appointment deferred longer than you desired or expected.
Is there some hitch about it, eh?
The nomination may perhaps be made conditional on the result of a competition.
Competition? Think of that, Hedda. But who can my competitor be? Surely not.
Yes, precisely. Eilert Lovborg.
No. No, it's quite impossible, though.
That is what it may come to all the same.
Well, but Judge Brack, it would show the most incredible lack of consideration for me. Just think, I'm a married man. We have married on the strength of these prospects, Hedda and I. And run deep into debt, and borrowed money from Aunt Julia, too. Good heavens, they had as good as promised me the appointment, eh?
Well, no doubt you will get it in the end, only after a contest.
Fancy, Tesman, there will be a sort of sporting interest in that.
Why, my dearest Hedda, how can you be so indifferent about it?
I am not at all indifferent. I'm most eager to see who wins.
In any case, Mrs. Tesman, it is best that you should know how matters stand. I mean, before you set about the little purchases I hear you are threatening.
This can make no difference.
Indeed. Then I have no more to say. Goodbye. I shall look in on my way back from my afternoon walk and take you home with me.
Oh, yes. Your news has quite upset me.
Goodbye, Judge, and be sure to call in the afternoon.
Many thanks. Goodbye. Goodbye.
Goodbye, my dear Judge. You must really excuse me. Oh, Hedda, one should never rush into adventures, eh?
Do you do that?
Yes, dear. There's no denying. It was adventurous to go and marry and set up house upon mere expectations.
Perhaps you are right there.
Well, at all events, we have our delightful home. Hedda, fancy the home we both dreamed of, the home we were in love with, I may almost say. Huh?
It was part of our compact that we were to go into society, to keep open house.
Yes, if you only knew how I had been looking forward to it. Fancy, to see you as hostess in a select circle, huh? Well. We shall have to get along without society, Hedda, only to invite Aunt Julia now and then. Oh, I intended you to lead such an utterly different life, dear.
Of course I cannot have my man in livery just yet.
Oh, no, unfortunately. It would be out of the question for us to keep a footman, you know.
And the saddle horse I was to have had?
The saddle horse?
I suppose I must not think of that now.
Good heavens, no. That's as clear as daylight.
Well, I shall have one thing at least to kill time with in the meanwhile.
Oh, thank goodness for that. What is it, Hedda? Well?
My pistols, George.
Your pistols?
General Gabler's pistols.
No, for heaven's sakes. Hedda, darling, don't touch those dangerous things. For my sake, Hedda.
HEDDA GABLER, Act 2. Hedda's piano has been replaced by a writing table with bookshelves. Mrs. Elsted's gift of flowers has been placed on a large table. Hedda is dressed to receive callers. She is alone in the room. She stands by the open door leading to the garden, holding a loaded revolver. Hedda calls to Judge Brack, who is walking down the garden path towards the villa.
So you are here again, Judge.
As you see, Mrs. Tesman.
Hedda raises the pistol and points.
Now I'll shoot you, Judge Brack.
No. Don't stand aiming at me.
This is what comes of sneaking in by the back way.
Hedda fires the pistol.
Are you out of your senses?
Dear me, did I happen to hit you?
I wish you would let these pranks alone.
Come in then, Judge.
Judge Brack enters. He is dressed for a men's party. He carries a light overcoat over his arm.
What the deuce? Haven't you tired of that sport yet? What are you shooting at?
Oh, I am only firing in the air.
Brack gently takes the pistol out of her hand.
Allow me, madam.
He looks at it.
Ah, I know this pistol well. Where is the case? Ah, here it is.
He lays the pistol in its case and shuts it.
Now, we won't play at that game any more today.
Then what in heaven's name would you have me do with myself?
Have you had no visitors?
Not one. I suppose all our set are still out of town.
And is Tessman not at home either?
No, he rushed off to his aunt's directly after lunch. He didn't expect you so early.
How stupid of me not to have thought of that.
Why stupid?
Because if I had thought of it, I should have come a little earlier.
Then you would have found no one to receive you, for I have been in my room changing my dress ever since lunch.
And is there no sort of little chink that we could hold a parley through?
You have forgotten to arrange one.
That was another piece of stupidity.
Well, we must just settle down here and wait. Tessman is not likely to be back for some time.
Never mind. I shall not be impatient.
Hedda seats herself at the corner of the sofa. Brack lays his overcoat over the back of the nearest chair and sits down, but keeps his hat in his hand. There is a short silence. They look at each other.
Well?
Well?
I spoke first.
Come, let us have a cozy little chat, Mrs. Hedda.
Does it not seem like a whole eternity since our last talk? Of course, I don't count those few words yesterday evening and this morning.
Even since our last confidential talk? Our last tete-a-tete?
Well, yes, since you put it so.
Not a day passed, but I have wished that you were home again.
Yet I have done nothing but wish the same thing.
You? Really, Mrs. Hedda? I thought you had been enjoying your tour so much.
Oh, yes, you may be sure of that.
But Tessman's letters spoke of nothing but happiness.
Oh, Tessman. You see, he thinks nothing is so delightful as grubbing in libraries and making copies of old parchments, or whatever you call them.
Well, that is his vocation in life, or part of it at any rate.
Yes, of course, and no doubt when it's your vocation. But oh, my dear Mr. Brack, how mortally bored I have been.
Do you really say so? In downright earnest?
Yes, you can surely understand it. To go for 6 whole months without meeting a soul that knew anything of our circle, or could talk about things we were interested in.
Yes, yes. I too should feel that a deprivation.
And then, what I found most intolerable of all,
Well?
was being everlastingly in the company of one and the same person.
Morning, noon, and night. Yes, at all possible times and seasons.
I said everlastingly.
Just so. But I should have thought with our excellent Tessman one could...
Tessman is a specialist, my dear judge.
Undeniable.
And specialists are not at all amusing to travel with. Not in the long run, at any rate.
Not even the specialist one happens to love.
Oh, don't use that sickening word.
What do you say, Mrs. Hedda?
You should just try it. To hear of nothing but the history of civilization, morning, noon, and night.
Everlastingly.
Yes, yes, yes. And then all this about the domestic industry of the Middle Ages. That's the most disgusting part of it.
But tell me, in this case, how am I to understand your...
My accepting George Tessman, you mean?
Well, let us put it so.
Good heavens, do you see anything so wonderful in that?
Yes and no, Mrs. Hedda.
I had positively danced myself tired, my dear judge. No, no, I won't say that, nor think it either.
You have assuredly no reason to.
Oh, reasons. And George Tessman, after all, you must admit that he is correctness itself.
His correctness and respectability are beyond all question.
And I don't see anything absolutely ridiculous about him. Do you?
Ridiculous? No, I shouldn't exactly say so.
Well, and his powers of research, at all events, are untiring. I see no reason why he should not one day come to the front, after all.
I thought that you, like everyone else, expected him to attain the highest distinction.
Yes, so did I. And then, since he was bent at all hazards on being allowed to provide for me, I really don't know why I should not have accepted his offer.
No, if you look at it in that light.
It was more than any other adorers were prepared to do for me, my dear Judge.
Well, I can't answer for all the rest. You know quite well that I have always entertained a certain respect for the marriage tie. For marriage as an institution, Miss Hedda.
Oh, I assure you I have never cherished any hopes with respect to you.
All I require is a pleasant and intimate interior where I can make myself useful in every way, and I'm free to come and go as a trusted friend.
Of the master of the house, do you mean?
Frankly, of the mistress first of all, but of course of the master too in the second place. Such a triangular friendship, if I may call it so, is really a great convenience for all the parties, let me tell you.
Yes, I have many a time longed for someone to make a third on our travels. Oh, those railway carriage tete-a-tetes.
Fortunately, your wedding journey is over now.
Not by a long, long way. I have only arrived at a station on the line.
Well, then the passengers jump out and move about a little, Mrs. Hedda.
I never jump out.
Really?
No, because there is always someone standing by to...
To look at your ankles, do you mean?
Precisely.
Well, but, dear me.
I won't have it. I would rather keep my seat where I happen to be and continue the tete-a-tete.
But suppose a third person were to jump in and join the couple.
Ah, that is quite another matter.
A trusted, sympathetic friend.
With a fund of conversation and all sorts of lively topics.
And not the least bit of a specialist.
Yes, that would be a relief indeed.
Someone is entering the front door of the villa.
Ah, the triangle is completed.
And on goes the train.
George Tessman enters. He is in a gray walking suit with a soft felt hat. He has a number of unbound books under his arm and in his pockets.
Oh, what a load for a warm day, all these books. I'm positively perspiring, Hedda. Hello. You are here already, my dear Judge, Berta didn't tell me.
I came in through the garden.
What books have you got there?
Some new books on my special subjects, quite indispensable to me.
Your special subjects.
Yes, books on special subjects, Mrs. Tessman.
Brack and Hedda exchange a confidential smile.
Do you need still more books on your special subjects?
Yes, my dear Hedda, one can never have too many of them. Of course, one must keep up with all that is written and published.
Yes, I suppose one must.
And look here. I have got hold of Eilert Lovborg's new book, too. Perhaps you would like to glance through it, Hedda, huh?
No, thank you. Or rather, afterward, perhaps.
I looked into it a little on the way home.
Well, what did you think of it? As a specialist?
I think it shows quite remarkable soundness of judgment. He never wrote like this before. Now I shall take all of these into my study, and then I must change my clothes. Judge Brack, I suppose we needn't start just yet, huh?
Oh, dear no. There is not the slightest hurry.
Well then, I will take my time. By the by, Hedda, Aunt Julia is not coming this evening.
Not coming? Isn't that affair of the bonnet that keeps her away?
Oh, not at all. How could you think such a thing of Aunt Julia? Just fancy. The fact is, Aunt Rena is very ill.
She always is.
Yes, but today she is much worse than usual, poor dear.
Oh, then it's only natural that her sister should remain with her. I must bear my disappointment.
And you can't imagine, dear, how delighted Aunt Julia seemed to be because you had come home looking so flourishing.
Oh, those everlasting aunts.
What?
Nothing.
Oh, all right.
Tessman exits.
What bonnet were you talking about?
Oh, it was a little episode with Miss Tessman this morning. She had laid down her bonnet on the chair there, and I pretended to think it was the servant's.
Now, my dear Mrs. Hedda, how could you do such a thing? To the excellent old lady, too.
Well, you see, these impulses come over me all of a sudden, and I cannot resist them. Oh, I don't know how to explain it.
You are not really happy. That is at the bottom of it.
I know of no reason why I should be happy. Perhaps you can give me one.
Well, amongst other things, because you have got exactly the home you had such a heart on.
Do you too believe in that legend?
Is there nothing in it, then?
Oh yes, there is something in it.
Well?
There is this in it, that I made use of Tessman to see me home from the evening parties last summer.
I, unfortunately, had to go quite a different way.
That's true. I know you were going a different way last summer.
Oh, fie, Mrs. Hedda. Well, then, you and Tessman?
Well, we happened to pass here one evening. Tessman, poor fellow, was writhing in the agony of having to find conversation, so I took pity on the learned man.
You took pity,
Yes, I really did. And so, to help him out of his torment, I happened to say, in pure thoughtlessness, that I should like to live in this villa.
No more than that.
Not that evening.
But afterwards.
Yes, my thoughtlessness had consequences, my dear Judge.
Unfortunately, that too often happens, Mrs. Hedda.
So you see, it was this enthusiasm for Secretary Falk's villa that first constituted a bond of sympathy between George Tessman and me. From that came our engagement and our marriage and our wedding journey and all the rest of it. Well, my dear Judge, as you make your bed, so you must lie, I could almost say.
This is exquisite. And you really cared not a rap about him all the time.
No, heaven knows I didn't.
But now? Now that we have made it so homelike for you?
The rooms all seem to smell of lavender and dried rose leaves. But perhaps it's Aunt Julia that has brought that scent with her.
No, I think it must be a legacy from the late Mrs. Secretary Falk.
Yes, there is an odor of mortality about it. It reminds me of a bouquet the day after the ball. Oh, my dear Judge, you cannot imagine how horribly I shall bore myself here.
Why should not you, too, find some sort of vocation in life, Mrs. Hedda?
A vocation? That should attract me?
It's possible, of course.
Heaven knows what sort of vocation that could be. I often wonder whether... But that would never do either.
Who can tell? Let me hear what it is.
Whether I might not get Tessman to go into politics, I mean.
Tessman? No, really now, political life is not the thing for him. Not at all in his line.
No, I dare say not. But if I could get him into it all the same?
Why? What satisfaction would you find in that? If he is not fitted for that sort of thing, why should you want to drive him into it?
Because I am bored, I tell you. So you think it quite out of the question that Tessman should ever get into the ministry?
You see, my dear Mrs. Hedda, to get into the ministry, he would have to be a tolerably rich man.
Yes, there we have it. It is this genteel poverty I have managed to drop into. That is what makes life so pitiable, so utterly ludicrous. For that's what it is.
Now I should say the fault lay elsewhere.
Where then?
You have never gone through any real stimulating experience.
Anything serious, you mean?
Yes, you may call it so, but now you may perhaps have one in store.
No, you're thinking of the annoyances about this wretched professorship, but that must be Tesman's own affair. I assure you I shall not waste a thought upon it.
No, no, I dare say not. But suppose now that what people call, in elegant language, a solemn responsibility were to come upon you. A new responsibility, Mrs. Hedda.
Be quiet. Nothing of that sort will ever happen.
We will speak of this again a year hence, at the very outside.
I have no time for anything of that sort, Judge Breck. No responsibilities for me.
Are you so unlike the generality of women as to have no turn for duties, which—
Oh, be quiet, I tell you. I often think there's only one thing in the world I have any time for.
And what is that, if I may ask?
Boring myself to death. Now you know it. Yes, as I thought, here comes the professor.
Come, Mrs. Hedda.
George Tesman enters. He is dressed for the party, with his gloves and hat in hand.
Hedda, has no message come from Eilert Lovborg?
No.
Then you'll see he'll be here presently.
Do you really think he'll come?
Yes, I am almost sure of it, for what you were telling us this morning must have been mere floating rumor.
You think so?
At any rate, Aunt Julia said she did not believe for a moment that he would ever stand in my way again. Fancy that.
Well then, that's all right.
Yes, you must really let me wait for him as long as possible.
We have plenty of time yet. None of my guests will arrive before 7 or past.
Then meanwhile we can keep Hedda company and see what happens, eh?
And at the worst, Mr. Lovborg can remain here with me.
What do you mean by at the worst?
If he won't go with you and Tesman.
But Hedda, dear, do you think it would quite do for him to remain here with you, huh? Remember, Aunt Julia can't come.
No, but Mrs. Elstead is coming. We three can have a cup of tea together.
Oh, yes, that will be all right.
And that would perhaps be the safest plan for him.
Why so?
Well, you know, Mrs. Tesman, how you used to gird at my little bachelor parties. You declared they were adapted only for men of the strictest principles.
But no doubt Mr. Lovborg's principles are strict enough now.
A converted sinner.
Berta enters.
There is a gentleman asking if you are at home, ma'am.
Well, show him in.
Eilert Lovborg enters. He is slim and lean, and of the same age as Tesman. He is dressed in a well-cut black visiting suit, quite new. He makes a rapid bow, seeming somewhat embarrassed.
Well, my dear Eilert, so at last we meet again.
Thanks for your letter, Tesman. Will you, too, shake hands with me, Mrs. Tesman?
Hedda takes his hand.
I am glad to see you, Mr. Lovborg. I don't know whether you two gentlemen—
Judge Brack, I think.
Oh, yes, in the old days.
And now you must make yourself entirely at home, Eilert. Mustn't he, Hedda? For I hear you are going to settle in town again, eh?
Yes, I am.
Quite right, quite right. Let me tell you, I have got hold of your new book, but I haven't had time to read it yet.
You may spare yourself the trouble.
Why so?
Because there is very little in it.
Just fancy, how can you say so?
But it has been very much praised, I hear.
That was what I wanted, so I put nothing into the book but what everyone would agree with.
Very wise of you.
Well, but, my dear Eilert—
For now I mean to win myself a position again, to make a fresh start.
Ah, that is what you wish to do, huh?
Lovborg draws a packet wrapped in paper from his coat pocket.
But when this one appears, George Tesman, you will have to read it, for this is the real book, the book I have put my true self into.
Indeed. What is it?
It is the continuation.
The continuation? Of what?
Of the book.
Of the new book?
Of course.
My dear Eilert, does it not come down to our own days?
Yes, it does. and this one deals with the future.
With the future? But good heavens, we know nothing of the future.
No, but there's a thing or two to be said about it all the same.
Lubborg opens the packet.
Look here.
Why, that's not your handwriting.
I dictated it. It falls into 2 sections. The first deals with the civilizing forces of the future, and here is the second, forecasting the probable line of development.
How odd now. I should never have thought of writing anything of that sort.
I dare say not.
I've brought it, thinking I might read you a little of it this evening.
That was very good of you, Eilert. But this evening? I don't see how we can manage it.
Well, then some other time. There is no hurry.
I must tell you, Mr. Lubborg, there is a little gathering at my house this evening, mainly in honor of Tessman, you know.
Oh, then I won't detain you.
No, but listen, will you not do me the favor of joining us?
No, I can't. Thanks. Thank you very much.
Oh, nonsense. Do. We shall be quite a select little circle, and I assure you we shall have a lively time, as Mrs. Tessman says.
I have no doubt of it, but nevertheless...
And then you might bring your manuscript with you and read it to Tessman at my house. I could give you a room to yourselves.
Yes, think of that, Eilert. Why shouldn't you, huh?
But Tessman, if Mr. Lubborg would really rather not, I am sure Mr. Lubborg is much more inclined to remain here and have supper with me.
With you, Mrs. Tessman?
And with Mrs. Elfstead.
Ah, I saw her for a moment this morning.
Did you? Well, she's coming this evening. So you can see your aunt's bound to remain, Mr. Lubborg, or she will have no one to see her home.
That's true. Many thanks, Mrs. Tessman. In that case, I will remain.
Then I have 1 or 2 orders to give the servant.
Hedda rings the bell. Berta enters. Hedda talks to her in a whisper and points towards the inner room. Berta nods and goes out again.
Tell me, Eilert, is this new subject, the future, that you're going to lecture about?
Yes.
They told me at the bookseller's that you are going to deliver a course of lectures this autumn.
That is my intention. I hope you won't take it ill, Tessman.
Oh, no, not in the least. But...
I can quite understand that it must be very disagreeable to you.
Oh, I can't expect you, out of consideration for me, to...
But I shall wait till you have received your appointment.
Will you wait? Yes, but are you not going to compete with me, huh?
No. It is only the moral victory I care for.
Why, bless me. Then Aunt Julia was right after all. Oh, yes, I knew it. Hedda, just fancy, Eilert Lubborg is not going to stand in our way.
Our way? Pray leave me out of the question.
And you, Judge Brack, what do you say to this, huh?
Well, I say that a moral victory may be all very fine.
Yes, certainly. But all the same...
You stand there, Tessman, looking as if you were thunderstruck.
Yes, so I am. I almost think...
Don't you see, Mrs. Tessman, a thunderstorm has just passed over.
Will you not take a glass of cold punch, gentlemen?
Well, a quick cup. Yes, it wouldn't come amiss.
A capital idea, Hedda. Just the thing, now that the weight has been taken off my mind.
Will you not join them, Mr. Lubborg?
No, thank you. Nothing for me.
Why, bless me, a cold punch is surely not poison.
Perhaps not for everyone.
I will keep Mr. Lubborg company in the meantime.
Yes, Hedda dear, too.
Tessman and Brack exit.
Do you care to look at some photographs, Mr. Lubborg? You know, Tessman and I made a tour in the Tyrol on our way home.
Hedda picks up an album and places it on the table beside the sofa. Eilert Lubborg approaches, stops, and looks at her. He then takes a chair and seats himself to her left. Hedda opens the album.
Do you see this range of mountains, Mr. Lubborg? It's the Ortler Group. Tessman has written the name underneath. Here it is, the Ortler Group near Meran.
Lubborg has not taken his eyes off of Hedda.
HEDDA GABLER.
Hush.
HEDDA GABLER.
That was my name in the old days, when we two knew each other.
And I must teach myself never to say HEDDA GABLER again. Never, as long as I live.
Yes, you must. And I think you ought to practice in time. The sooner, the better, I should say.
HEDDA GABLER married? And married to George Tessman?
Yes, so the world goes.
Oh, Hedda. Hedda, how could you throw yourself away?
What? I can't allow this.
What do you mean?
Tessman enters.
And this is a view from the Val d'Ampissol, Mr. Loveboard. Just look at these peaks. What's the name of these curious peaks, dear?
Let me see. Oh, those are the Dolomites.
Yes, that's it. Those are the Dolomites, Mr. Lovborg.
Hedda, dear, I only wanted to ask whether I shouldn't bring you a little punch after all. For yourself, at any rate, then?
Yes, do, please. And perhaps a few biscuits.
No cigarettes?
No.
Very well.
Tessman exits.
Answer me, Hedda. How could you go and do this?
If you continue to say that to me, I won't talk to you.
May I not speak, even when we are alone?
No, you may think it, but you mustn't say it.
Ah, I understand. It is an offense against George Tessman, whom you love.
Love? What an idea.
You don't love him, then?
But I won't hear of any unfaithfulness. Remember that.
Hedda, answer me one thing.
Hush.
Tessman enters with a small tray.
Here you are. Isn't this tempting?
Why do you bring it yourself?
Because I think it's such fun to wait upon you, Hedda.
But you have poured out 2 glasses. Mr. Lovborg said he wouldn't have any.
No, but Mrs. Elstead will soon be here, won't she?
Yes, by the by, Mrs. Elstead.
Had you forgotten her?
We were so absorbed in these photographs. Do you remember this little village?
Oh, it's that one just below the Brenner Pass. It was there we passed the night.
We met that lovely party of tourists.
Yes, that was the place. Fancy if we could only have had you with us, Eilert, huh?
Tessman exits.
Answer me one thing, Hedda.
Well?
Was there no love in your friendship for me either? Not a spark, not a tinge of love in it?
I wonder if there was. To me it seems as though we were 2 good comrades, 2 thoroughly intimate friends. You especially were frankness itself.
It was you that made me so.
As I look back upon it, I think there was really something beautiful, something fascinating, something daring in that secret intimacy, that comradeship which no living creature so much as dreamed of.
Yes, Hedda. Was there not? When I used to come to your father's in the afternoon, and the General sat over at the window reading his papers, with his back towards us.
And we 2 on the corner sofa.
Always with the same illustrated paper before us.
The want of an album, yes?
Yes, Hedda. And when I made my confessions to you, told you about myself, things that at that time no one else knew, there I would sit and tell you of my escapades, my days and nights of devilment. Oh, Hedda, what was the power in you that forced me to confess these things?
Do you think it was any power in me?
How else can I explain it? And all those roundabout questions you used to put to me.
Which you understood so particularly well.
How could you sit and question me like that? Question me quite frankly.
In roundabout terms, please observe.
Yes, but frankly, nevertheless. Cross-question me about all that sort of thing.
And how could you answer me, Mr. Lovborg?
Yes, that is just what I can't understand in looking back upon it. But tell me now, Hedda, was there not love at the bottom of our friendship? On your side, did you not feel as though you might purge my stains away if I made you my confessor? Was it not so?
No, not quite.
What was your motive then?
Do you think it quite incomprehensible that a young girl, when it can be done, without anyone knowing,
Well,
should be glad to have a peep now and then into a world which he is forbidden to know anything about.
So that was it.
Partly, I almost think.
But why should not that, at any rate, have continued?
The fault was yours.
It was you that broke with me.
Yes, when our friendship threatened to develop into something more serious. Shame on you, Eilert Lovborg. How could you think of wronging your frank comrade?
Oh, why did you not carry out your threat? Why did you not shoot me down?
Because I have a dread of scandal.
Yes, Hedda, you are a coward at heart.
A terrible coward. But it was a lucky thing for you, and now you have found ample consolation at the estates.
I know what Thea has confided to you.
And perhaps you have confided to her something about us.
Not a word. She is too stupid to understand anything of that sort.
Stupid.
She is stupid about matters of that sort.
And I am cowardly. But now I will confide something to you.
Well?
The fact that I dared not shoot you down.
Yes.
That was not my errant cowardice. That evening.
Oh, HEDDA GABLER. Now I begin to see a hidden reason beneath our comradeship. You and I, after all then, it was your craving for life.
Take care, I believe nothing of that sort. Ah, at last, my darling Thea, my sweet Thea, you can't think how I've been longing for you.
Ought I go in to talk to your husband for a moment?
Oh, not at all. Leave us two alone. They will soon be going.
Are they going out?
Yes, to a supper party.
Not you?
No.
Mr. Lovborg remains with us.
Oh, how nice it is here.
Oh, no thank you, my little Thea. Don't sit there. You'll be good enough to come over here to me. I will sit between you.
Yes, just as you please.
Is not she lovely to look at?
Only to look at.
Yes, for we two, she and I, we are two real comrades. We have absolute faith in each other, so we can sit and talk with perfect frankness.
Not roundabout, Mr. Lovborg.
When?
Oh, how happy I am, Hedda. For only think, he says I have inspired him too.
Ah, does he say that, dear?
And then she is so brave, Mrs. Tessman.
Good heavens, am I brave?
Exceedingly, where your comrade is concerned.
Ah, yes, courage, if one only had that.
What then? What do you mean?
Then life would perhaps be livable after all. But now, my dear Thea, you really must have a glass of cold punch.
No thanks, I never take anything of that kind.
Well then you, Mr. Lovborg.
Nor I, thank you.
No, he doesn't either.
But if I say you shall.
It would be of no use.
Then I, poor creature, have no sort of power over you?
Not in that respect.
But certainly I think you ought to, for your own sake.
Why, Hedda?
How so?
Or rather on account of other people.
Indeed?
Otherwise people might be apt to suspect that, in your heart of hearts, you did not feel quite secure, quite confident in yourself.
Oh, please, Hedda.
People may suspect what they like for the present.
Yes, let them.
I saw it plainly in Judge Brack's face a moment ago.
What did you see?
His contemptuous smile when you dared not go with him into the inner room.
Dared not. Of course, I preferred to stop here and talk to you.
What could be more natural, Hedda?
But the judge could not guess that, and I say, too, the way he smiled and glanced at Tessman when you dared not accept his invitation to this wretched little supper party of his.
Dared not? Do you say I dared not?
I don't say so, but that's how Judge Brack understood it.
Well, let him.
Then you are not going with him?
I will stay here with you and Thea.
Yes, Hedda. How can you doubt that?
Firm as a rock, faithful to your principles now and forever. Ah, that is how a man should be. Well now, what did I tell you, Mrs. Elfstead? when you came to us this morning in such a state of distraction?
Distraction?
Hedda. Oh, Hedda.
You can see for yourself. You haven't the slightest reason to be in such mortal terror. There. Now we can all three enjoy ourselves.
What is this, Mrs. Tessman?
Oh, my God, Hedda. What are you saying? What are you doing?
Don't get excited. That horrid Judge Brack is sitting, watching you.
So she was in mortal terror on my account?
Oh, Hedda. Now you have ruined everything.
So that was my comrade's frank confidence in me?
Oh, my dearest friend, only let me tell you.
Ludbord takes a glass of punch and raises it to his lips.
Your health, fair.
Oh, Hedda. Hedda, how could you do this?
I do it. Are you crazy?
Here's to your health, too, Mrs. Tessman. Thanks for the truth. Hurrah for the truth.
He empties the glass, puts it down, and takes a second glass.
Come, come. No more for the present. Remember you are going out to supper.
No, no, no.
Hush. They are sitting, watching you.
Now, fair, tell me the truth.
Yes?
Did your husband know that you had come after me?
Oh, Hedda, do you hear what he is asking?
Was it arranged between you and him that you were to come to town and look after me? Perhaps it was the sheriff himself that urged you to come. Aha, my dear, no doubt he wanted my help in his office, or was it at the card table that he missed me?
Oh, Lovborg. Lovborg.
He empties the glass and is about to refill it.
Here is a glass for the old sheriff, too.
Hedda stops him.
No more just now. Remember, you have to read your manuscript to Tessman.
Ludbord calmly puts the glass down.
It was stupid of me, all this. Fair. To take it in this way, I mean. Don't be angry with me, my dear, dear comrade. You shall see, both you and the others, that if I was fallen once, now I have risen again. Thanks to you, Thea.
Oh, heaven be praised.
Judge Brack looks at his watch.
Well, Mrs. Tessman, our time has come.
I suppose it has.
Mine too, Judge Brack.
Oh, Lovborg, don't do it.
They can hear you.
Hedda pinches her arm.
Ow.
Judge Brack gets his hat and overcoat.
You were good enough to invite me.
Well, are you coming after all?
Yes, many thanks.
I'm delighted.
Tessman, I should like to show you one or two things before I send it to the printers.
Fancy. That would be delightful. But, Hedda dear, how is Mrs. Elfstead to get home, eh?
Oh, that can be managed somehow.
Mrs. Elfstead? Of course. I'll come again and fetch her. At 10 or thereabouts, Mrs. Tessman. Will that do?
Certainly, that will do capitally.
Well then, that's all right. But you must not expect me so early, Hedda.
Oh, you may stop as long as ever you please.
Well then, Mr. Lovborg, I shall remain here until you come.
Pray do, Mrs. Elfstead.
And now off goes the excursion train, gentlemen. I hope we shall have a lively time, as a certain fair lady puts it.
Ah, if only the fair lady could be present, unseen.
Why unseen?
In order to hear a little of your liveliness at first hand, Judge Brack.
Oh, I should not advise the fair lady to try it.
Oh, come, you're a nice one, Hedda. Fancy that.
Well, goodbye. Goodbye, ladies.
About 10 o'clock, then.
Judge Brack, Lovborg, and Tessman exit out the hall door. At the same time, Berta enters with a lighted lamp, which she places on the drawing-room table. She then exits.
Hedda, what will become of all this?
At 10 o'clock, he will be here. I can see him already, with vine leaves in his hair, flushed and fearless.
Oh, I hope he may.
And then, you see, then he will have regained control over himself. Then he will be a free man for all his days.
Oh, God, If he would only come as you see him now.
He will come as I see him so, and not otherwise. You may doubt him as long as you please. I believe in him. And now we will try...
You have some hidden motive in this, Hedda.
Yes, I have. I want for once in my life to have power to mold a human destiny.
Have you not the power?
I have not, and have never had it.
Not your husband's?
Do you think that is worth the trouble? No, if you could only understand how poor I am, and fate has made you so rich. I think I must burn your hair off after all.
Let me go. Let me go. I'm afraid of you, Hedda.
Berta enters.
Tea is laid in the dining room, ma.
Very well, we are coming.
Oh, no. I would rather go home alone at once.
Nonsense. First you shall have a cup of tea, you little stupid, and then, at 10 o'clock, our little Lugborg will be here, with vine leaves in his hair.
Hedda drags Mrs. Elstead almost by force through the doorway. Act 3. The curtains are drawn over the middle doorway and also over the glass door leading to the garden. Mrs. Elstead is resting in an armchair with her feet on a footrest and wrapped in a shawl. Hedda lies sleeping on the sofa with a sofa blanket over her. Mrs. Elstead only sits up in her chair and listens eagerly. She then sinks back again wearily, moaning to herself.
Not yet. Oh, God, not yet.
Berta enters by the hall door. She has a letter in her hand.
Well, has it even come?
Yes, a girl has just brought this letter.
A letter? Give it to me.
No, it's for Dr. Tessman, man.
Oh, indeed.
It was Miss Tessman's servant that brought it. I lay it here on the table.
Yes, do.
I think I had better put out the lamp. It's smoking.
Yes, put it out. It must soon be daylight now.
It is daylight already, ma'am.
Is it? And no one come back yet?
Lord bless you, men. I guessed how it would be.
You guessed?
Yes, when I saw that a certain person had come back to town and that he went off with him. For we've heard enough about that gentleman before now.
Don't speak so loud. You awaken Mrs. Tessman.
No. Let her sleep, poor thing. Shan't I put some wood on the fire?
Thanks, not for me.
Oh, very well.
Berta exits. Hedda is wakened by the shutting of the door and looks up.
What's that?
It was only the servant.
Oh, we're here. Yes, now I remember. What o'clock is it, Thea?
It's past 7.
When did Tessman come home?
He has not come.
Not come home yet?
No one has come.
Think of our watching and waiting here till 4 in the morning.
And how I watched and waited for him.
Well, we might have spared ourselves the trouble.
Did you get a little sleep?
Oh, yes, I believe I have slept pretty well. Have you not?
Not for a moment. I couldn't, Hedda, not to save my life.
There. There's nothing to be so alarmed about. I understand quite well what has happened.
Well, what do you think? Won't you tell me?
Why, of course it has been a very late affair at Judge Brack's.
Yes, that's clear enough, but all the same.
And then, you see, Tessman hasn't cared to come home and ring us up in the middle of the night. Perhaps he wasn't inclined to show himself either, immediately after a jollification.
But in that case, where can he have gone?
Of course he has gone to his aunt's and slept there. They have his old room ready for him.
No, he can't be with them, for a letter has just come for him from Miss Tessman. There it lies.
Indeed? Why, yes, it's addressed in Aunt Julia's hand. Well, then, he has remained at Judge Brack's. And as for Eilert Lovborg, he is sitting with vine leaves in his hair, reading his manuscript.
Oh, Hedda, you are just saying things you don't believe a bit.
You really are a little blockhead, Thea.
Oh, yes, I suppose I am.
And how mortally tired you look.
Yes, I am mortally tired.
Well then, you must do as I tell you. You must go to my room and lie down for a little while.
Oh, no, no, I shouldn't be able to sleep.
I am sure you would.
Well, but your husband is certain to come soon now, and then I want to know at once.
I shall take care to let you know when he comes.
Do you promise me, Hedda?
Yes, rely upon me. Just you go in and have a sleep in the meantime.
Thanks. Then I'll try.
Mrs. Elstead exits. Hedda gets up and goes to the door leading to the garden. She draws back the curtains. The broad daylight streams into the room. Then she takes a little mirror from the writing table. She looks at herself and arranges her hair. Next, she goes to the hall door and rings for Berta. Berta enters.
Did you want something now?
Yes, you must put some more wood in the stove. I am shivering.
Bless me. I'll make up the fire at once.
There is a ring at the front door.
That was a ring at the front door, ma'am.
Then go to the door. I will look after the fire.
It'll soon burn up.
Berta exits. Hedda kneels at the footrest and lays some more pieces of wood in the stove. Tesman enters from the hall. He tiptoes toward the middle doorway and is about to slip through the curtains.
Good morning.
Hedda, good heavens, are you up so early,
Yes, I am up very early this morning.
And I never doubted you would still sound asleep. Fancy that, Hedda.
Don't speak so loud. Mrs. Elstead is resting in my room.
Has Mrs. Elstead been here all night?
Yes, since no one came to fetch her.
Ah, to be sure.
Well, did you enjoy yourself at Judge Brack's?
Have you been anxious about me,
No, I should never think of being anxious, but I asked if you had enjoyed yourself.
Oh, yes, for once in a way. Especially the beginning of the evening, for then Isle had read me part of his book. We arrived more than an hour too early, fancy that, and Brack had all sorts of arrangements to make, so Islet read to me.
Well, tell me then.
Oh, Hedda, you can't conceive what a book that it is going to be. I believe it is one of the most remarkable things that has ever been written. Fancy that.
Yes, I don't care about that.
I must make a confession to you, Hedda. When he had finished reading, a horrid feeling came over me.
A horrid feeling?
I felt jealous of Eilert for having had it in him to write such a book. Only think, Hedda.
Yes, I am thinking.
And then how pitiful to think that he, with all his gifts, should be irreclaimable after all.
I suppose you mean that he has more courage than the rest.
No, not at all. I mean that he is incapable of taking his pleasure in moderation.
And what came of it all, in the end?
Well, to tell the truth, I think it might best be described as an orgy, Hedda.
Had he vine leaves in his hair?
Vine leaves? No, I saw nothing of that sort. But he made a long, rambling speech in honor of the woman who had inspired him in his work. That was the phrase he used.
Did he name her?
No, he didn't, but I can't help thinking he meant Mrs. Elstead. You may be sure he did.
Well, where did you part from him?
On the way to town. We broke up, the last of us at any rate, all together, and Brat came with us to get a breath of fresh air. And then, you see, we agreed to take Eilert home, for he had had far more than was good for him.
I dare say.
But now comes the strange part of it, Hedda, or I should rather say the melancholy part of it. I declare I am almost ashamed, on Eilert's account, to tell you.
Oh, go on.
Well, as we were getting near town, you see, I happened to drop a little behind the others, only for a minute or two, fancy that.
Yes, but...
And then, as I hurried after them, what do you think I found by the wayside,
Oh, how should I know?
You mustn't speak of it to a soul, Hedda. Do you hear? Promise me, for Eilet's sake.
Tesman draws a parcel wrapped in paper from his coat pocket.
Fancy, dear, I found this.
Is that not the parcel he had with him yesterday?
Yes. It is the whole of his precious, irreplaceable manuscript, and he has gone and lost it, and knew nothing about it. Oh, fancy, Hedda, so deplorably.
But why did you not give him back the parcel at once?
I didn't dare to, in the state he was then in.
Did you not tell any of the others that you found it?
Oh, far from it. You can surely understand that for Eilit's sake. I wouldn't do that.
So no one knows that Eilert Lovborg's manuscript is in your possession?
No, and no one must know it.
Then what did you say to him afterwards?
I didn't talk to him again at all, for when we got in among the streets, he and 2 or 3 of the others gave us the slip and disappeared. Fancy that.
Indeed. They must have taken him home then.
Yes, so it would appear. And Brat, too, left us.
And what have you been doing with yourself since?
Well, I and some of the others went home with one of the party, a jolly fellow, and took our morning coffee with him, or perhaps I should rather call it our night coffee, but now, when I have rested a little and given Eilert, poor fellow, time to have his sleep out, I must take this back to him.
No, don't give it to him. Not in such a hurry, I mean. Let me read it first.
No, my dearest Hedda, I mustn't, I really mustn't.
You must not?
No, for you can imagine what a state of despair he will be in when he wakens and misses the manuscript. He has no copy of it, you must know. He told me so.
Can such a thing be reproduced? Written over again?
No, I don't think it would be possible. For the inspiration, you see.
Yes, I suppose it depends on that. But by the by, here is a letter for you.
Fancy.
It came early this morning.
It's from Aunt Julia. What can it be?
Tessman lays down the manuscript and opens the letter.
Oh, Hedda, she says that poor Aunt Rena is dying.
Well, we weren't prepared for that.
And that if I were to see her again, I must make haste. I'll run into them at once.
Will you run?
Oh, my dearest Hedda, if you could only make up your mind to come with me. Just think.
No, don't ask me. I will not look upon sickness and death. I loathe all sorts of ugliness.
Well then, my hat, my overcoat. Oh, in the hall. I do hope I mayn't come too late, Hedda.
Oh, if you run.
Berta enters.
Judge Brack is at the door and wishes to know if he may come in.
At this time? No, I can't possibly see him.
But I can. Ask Judge Brack to come in.
Berta exits.
The parcel, Tessman.
Yes, get it to me.
No, I will keep it till you come back.
Hedda goes to the writing table and places it in a bookcase. Judge Bratt enters.
You're an early bird, I must say.
Yes, don't you think so? Are you on the move too?
Yes, I must rush off to my aunt's. Fancy, the invalid one is lying at death's door, poor creature.
Dear me, is she indeed? Then on no account let me detain you at such a critical moment.
Yes, I must really rush. Goodbye.
Tessman rushes out the door.
You seem to have made a particularly lively night at your rooms, Judge Brack.
I assure you I have not had my clothes off, Mrs. Hedda.
Not you either.
No, as you may see. But what has Tessman been telling you of the night's adventures?
Oh, some tiresome story. Only that they went and had coffee somewhere or other.
I have heard about that coffee party already. That Lovborg was not with them, I fancy.
No, they had taken him home before that.
Tessman, too?
No, but some of the others, he said.
George Tessman is really an ingenious creature, Mrs. Hedda.
Yes, heaven knows he is. Then is there something behind all this?
Yes, perhaps there may be.
Well then, sit down, my dear judge, and tell me your story in comfort.
Brack sits near her.
Now then.
I had special reasons for keeping track of my guests last night.
Of Eilert Lovborg among the rest, perhaps?
Frankly, yes.
Now you make me really curious.
Do you know where he and 1 or 2 of the others finished the night, Mrs. Hedda?
If it is not quite unmentionable, tell me.
Oh, no, it's not at all unmentionable.
Well?
Well, they put in an appearance at a particularly animated soiree.
Of the lively kind?
Of the very liveliest.
Tell me more of this, Judge Brack.
Lodborg, as well as the others, had been invited in advance. I knew all about it. But he had declined the invitation, for now, as you know, he has become a new man.
Up at the Elsteads, yes. But he went after all, then.
Well, you see, Mrs. Hedda, unhappily the spirit moved him at my rooms last evening.
Yes, I hear he found inspiration.
Pretty violent inspiration. Well, I fancy that altered his purpose, for we menfolk are unfortunately not always so firm in our principles as we ought to be.
Oh, I am sure you are an exception, Judge Brack. But as to Lodborg?
To make a long story short, he landed at last in Mademoiselle Diana's rooms.
Mademoiselle Diana's?
It was Mademoiselle Diana that was giving the soiree to a select circle of her admirers and her lady friends.
Is she a red-haired woman?
Precisely.
A sort of a singer?
Oh, yes, in her leisure moments, and moreover a mighty huntress of men, Mrs. Hedda. You have no doubt heard of her. Eilert Lovborg was one of her most enthusiastic protectors in the days of his glory.
And how did all this end?
Far from amicably, it appears. After a most tender meeting, they seem to have come to blows.
Lovborg and she?
Yes. He accused her or her friends of having robbed him. He declared that his pocketbook had disappeared and other things as well. In short, he seemed to have made a furious disturbance.
And what came of it all?
It came to a general scrimmage, in which the ladies as well as the gentlemen took part. Fortunately, the police at last appeared on the scene.
The police, too?
Yes, I fancy it will prove a costly frolic for Eilert Lovborg, crazy bee that he is.
How so?
He seemed to have made a violent resistance, to have hit one of the constables on the head and torn the coat off his back, so that they had to march him off to the police station with the rest.
How have you learned all this?
From the police themselves.
So that's what happened. Then he had no vine leaves in his hair.
Vine leaves, Mrs. Hedda?
But tell me now, Judge, what is your real reason for tracking out Eilert Lovborg's movements so carefully?
In the first place, it could not be entirely indifferent to me if it should appear in the police court that he came straight from my house.
Will the matter come to court, then?
Of course. However, I should scarcely have troubled so much about that. But I thought that, as a friend of the family, it was my duty to supply you and Tesman with a full account of his nocturnal exploits.
Why so, Judge Brack?
Why? Because I have a shrewd suspicion that he intends to use you as a sort of blind.
Oh. How can you think of such a thing?
Good heavens, Mrs. Hedda. We have eyes in our head. Mark my words. This Mrs. Elstead will be in no hurry to leave town again.
Well, even if there should be anything between them, I suppose there are plenty of other places where they could meet.
Not a single home. Henceforth, as before, every respectable house will be closed against Eilert Lovborg.
And so ought mine to be, you mean?
Yes. I confess it would be more than painful to me if this personage were to be made free of your house. How superfluous, how intrusive he would be if he were to force his way into
the triangle.
Precisely. It would simply mean that I should find myself homeless.
So you want to be the one cock in the basket. That is your aim.
Yes, that is my aim. And for that I will fight, with every weapon I can command.
I see you are a dangerous person when it comes to the point.
Do you think so?
I am beginning to think so. And I am exceedingly glad to think that you have no sort of hold over me.
Well, Mrs. Hedda, perhaps you are right there. If I had, who knows what I might be capable of.
Come now, Judge Bracken. That sounds almost like a threat.
Oh, not at all. The triangle, you know, ought, if possible, to be spontaneously constructed.
There, I agree with you.
Well, now I have said all I have to say, and I had better be getting back to town. Goodbye, Mrs. Hedda.
Are you going through the garden?
Yes, it's a shortcut for me.
And then it is a back way, too.
Quite so. I have no objection to backways. They may be piquant enough at times.
When there is ball practice going on, you mean?
Oh, people don't shoot their tame poultry, I fancied.
Oh, no. When there is only one cock in the basket.
Judge Brack exits. Hedda closes the garden door. She then goes to the writing table and takes Lovborg's manuscript out of the bookcase. She is on the point of looking through its contents. Berta is heard speaking loudly in the hall. Hedda turns and listens. Then she hastily locks up the manuscript and hides the key. Eilif Lovborg enters. He looked somewhat confused and irritated.
And I tell you I must and will come in. There, I am in.
He closes the door, turns and sees Hedda, and once again regains his self-control.
Well, Mr. Lovborg, this was rather a late hour to call for Thea.
You mean at an early hour to call upon you? Pray pardon me.
How do you know that she is still here?
They told me at her lodgings that she had been out all night.
Did you notice anything about the people of the house when they said that?
Notice anything about them?
I mean, did they seem to think it odd?
Oh yes, of course. I am dragging her down with me. However, I didn't notice anything. I suppose Tessman is not up yet?
No, I think not.
When did he come home?
Very late.
Did he tell you anything?
Yes, I gathered that you had had an exceedingly jolly evening at Judge Brack's.
Nothing more?
I don't think so. However, I was so dreadfully sleepy.
Mrs. Elstead enters.
Ah, Lovborg, at last.
Yes, at last. And too late.
What? What is too late?
Everything is too late now. It is all over with me.
Oh, no, don't say that.
You will say the same when you're here.
I won't hear anything.
Perhaps you would prefer to talk to her alone. If so, I will leave you.
No, stay, you two. I beg you to stay.
Yes, but I won't hear anything, I tell you.
It is not last night's adventures that I want to talk about.
What is it, then?
I want to say that now our ways must part.
Part?
I knew it.
You can be of no more service to me, Thea.
How can you stand there and say that? No more service to you? I am not to help you now, as before? Are we not to go on working together?
Henceforward, I shall do no work.
Then what am I to do with my life?
You must try to live your life as if you had never known me.
But you know I can't do that.
Try. If you cannot, Thea, you must go home again.
Never in this world. Where you are, there will I be also. I will not let myself be driven away like this. I will remain here. I will be with you when the book appears.
Ah, yes, the book.
My book and Thea's, for that is what it is.
Yes, I feel that it is, and that is why I have a right to be with you when it appears. I will see with my own eyes how respect and honor pour in upon you afresh, and the happiness, oh, I must share it with you.
Thea, our book will never appear.
Never appear?
can never appear.
Lubborg, what have you done with the manuscript?
Yes, the manuscript.
Where is it?
The manuscript. Well then, I have torn the manuscript into 1,000 pieces.
Oh, no, no!
But that's not...
Not true, you think?
Oh, well, of course. Since you say so. But it sounded so improbable.
It is true all the same.
Oh, God. Oh, God, Hedda. Torn his own work to pieces?
I have torn my own life to pieces, so why should I not tear my life work too?
And you did this last night?
Yes, I tell you. I tore it into 1,000 pieces, and scattered them on the fjord, far out. There in cool sea water at any rate. Let them drift upon it, drift with the current and the wind, and then presently they will sink deeper and deeper, as I shall, Thea.
Do you know, Lovborg, that what you have done with the book, I shall think of it to my dying day as though you had killed a little child.
Yes, you are right. It is a sort of child murder.
How could you then? Did not the child belong to me too?
Ah, the child.
It is all over then. Well, now I will go, Hedda.
But you are not going away from town.
Oh, I don't know what I shall do. I see nothing but darkness before me.
Mrs. Elfstead exits.
So you are not going to see her home, Mr. Lubborg?
I? Through the streets? Would you have people see her walking with me?
Of course, I don't know what else may have happened last night. Is it so utterly irretrievable?
It will not end with last night. I know that perfectly well. And the thing is that now I have no taste for that sort of life either. I won't begin anew. She has broken my courage and my power of breathing life out.
So that pretty little fool has had her fingers in a man's destiny. But all the same, how could you treat her so heartlessly?
Ah, don't say that I was heartless.
To go and destroy what has filled her whole soul for months and years? You do not call that heartless?
To you, I can tell the truth, Hedda.
The truth?
First, promise me, give me your word, that what I now confide in you Thea shall never know.
I give you my word.
Good. Then let me tell you that what I said just now was untrue.
About the manuscript.
Yes, I have not torn it to pieces, nor thrown it into the fjord.
No, but where is it then?
I have destroyed it nonetheless. Utterly destroyed it, Hedda.
I don't understand.
Thea said that what I had done seemed to her like a child murder.
Yes, so she said.
But to kill his child, that is not the worst thing a father can do to it.
Not the worst.
Suppose now, Hedda, that a man in the small hours of the morning came home to his child's mother after a night of riot and debauchery and said, "Listen, I have been here and there, in this place and that, and I have taken our child with to this place and to that, and I have lost the child, utterly lost it. The devil knows into what hands it may have fallen, who may have had their clutches on it."
Well, but when all is said and done, you know, this was only a book.
Thea's pure soul was in that book.
Yes, so I understand.
And you can understand, too, that for her and me together no future is possible.
What path do you mean to take, then?
None. I will only try to make an end of it all. The sooner the better.
Islet Lubborg, listen to me. Will you not try to do it beautifully?
Beautifully, with vine leaves in my hair, as you used to dream in the old days.
No, no. I have lost my faith in the vine leaves, but beautifully nevertheless, for once in a way. Goodbye. You must go now. and do not come here any more.
Goodbye, Mrs. Tessman. And give George Tessman my love.
No, wait. I must give you a memento to take with you.
She goes to the writing table and opens the drawer with the pistol case, then returns to Loveborg with one of the pistols.
Is this the memento?
Do you recognize it? It was aiming at you once.
You should have used it then.
Take it, and do you use it now.
Loveborg takes the pistol and places it in his breast pocket.
Thanks.
And beautifully. Eilert Loveborg, promise me that.
Goodbye, Hedda Gabler.
Loveborg exits. Hedda listens for a moment at the door. Then she goes up to the writing table and takes out the manuscript. She pulls a few of the sheets half out and looks at them. Then she goes over and seats herself in the armchair beside the stove with the manuscript in her lap. She opens the stove door.
Now I am burning your child, Thea. Burning its curly locks. Your child and Eilert Loveborg's. I am burning your child.
Act 4. It is evening. The room is in darkness. Hedda, dressed in black, walks back and forth in the dark room. She then goes to the back of the room and disappears for a moment. She is heard striking a few chords on the piano and then returns. Berta enters with a lighted lamp which she places on a table. Her eyes are red with weeping, and she has black ribbons in her cap. Hedda goes up to the glass door leading to the garden, pulls back the curtain, and looks out into the darkness. Miss Tessman, in mourning, enters. Hedda goes toward her, holding out her hand.
Yes, Hedda, here I am, in mourning and forlorn, for now my poor sister has at last found peace.
I have heard the news already, as you see. Tessman sent me a card.
Yes, he promised me he would, but nevertheless, I thought that to Hedda, here in the house of life, I ought myself to bring the tidings of death.
That was very kind of you.
Rena ought not to have left us just now. This is not the time for Hedda's house to be a house of mourning.
She died quite peacefully, did she not, Miss Tessman?
Oh, her end was so calm, so beautiful, and then she had the unspeakable happiness of seeing George once more and bidding him good-bye. Has he not come home yet?
No, he wrote that he might be detained. But won't you sit down?
No, thank you, my dear, dear Hedda. I should like to, but I have so much to do. I must prepare my dear one for her rest as well as I can. She shall go to her grave looking her best.
Can I not help you in any way?
Oh, you must not think of it. Hedda Tessman must have no hand in such mournful work, nor let her thought dwell on it either. Not at this time.
One is not always mistress of one's thoughts.
Ah, yes, it is the way of the world. At home we shall be sewing a shroud, and here there will soon be sewing too, I suppose, but of another sort, thank God.
George Tessman enters.
Ah, you have come at last.
You here, Aunt Julia? With Hedda? Fancy that.
I was just going, my dear boy. Well, have you done all you promised?
No, I'm really afraid I've forgotten half of it. I must come to you again tomorrow. Today my brain is all a-whirl. I can't keep my thoughts together.
Why, my dear George, you mustn't take it in this way.
Mustn't? How do you mean?
Even in your sorrow you must rejoice, as I do. Rejoice that she is at rest.
Oh, yes, yes. You are thinking of Aunt Rena.
You will feel lonely now, Miss Tessman.
Just at first, yes. But that will not last very long, I hope. I dare say I shall soon find an occupant for Rena's little room.
Indeed. Who do you think will take it, eh?
Oh, there's always some poor invalid or other in want of nursing, unfortunately.
Would you really take such a burden upon you again?
A burden? Heaven forgive you, child. It has been no burden to me.
But suppose you had a total stranger on your hands.
Oh, one soon makes friends with sick folk, and it's such an absolute necessity for me to have someone to live for. Well, heaven be praised, there may soon be something in this house, too, to keep an old aunt busy.
Oh, don't trouble about anything here.
Yes, just fancy what a nice time we three might have together if...
If.
Oh, nothing. It will all come right. Let us hope so, eh?
Well, I dare say you two want to talk to each other, and perhaps Hedda may have something to tell you, George. Goodbye. I must go home to Rena. How strange it is to think that Rena is now with me and with my poor brother as well.
Yes, fancy that, Aunt Julia, huh?
Miss Teshman exits.
I almost believe your Aunt Rena's death affects you more than it does your Aunt Julia.
Oh, it's not that alone. It's Eilert that I'm so terribly uneasy about.
Is there anything new about him?
I looked in at his rooms this afternoon, intending to tell him the manuscript was in safe keeping.
Well, did you find him?
No, he wasn't at home. But afterwards I met Mrs. Elstead, and she told me that he had been here early this morning.
Yes, directly after you had gone.
And he said that he had torn his manuscript to pieces, huh?
Yes, so he declared.
Why, good heavens, he must have been completely out of his mind. And I suppose you thought it best not to give it back to him.
No, he did not get it.
But of course you told him we had it.
No, did you tell Miss Elvsted?
No, I thought I had better not. But you ought to have told him. Fancy if in desperation he should go and do himself some injury. Let me have the manuscript, Hedda. I will take it to him at once. Where is it?
I have not got it.
Have not got it? What in the world do you mean?
I have burnt it. Every line of it.
Burnt? Burnt Eilert's manuscript?
Don't scream so. The servant might hear you.
Burnt? Why, good God! No, it's impossible.
It is so, nevertheless.
Do you know what you have done, Hedda? It's unlawful appropriation of lost property. Fancy that. Just ask Judge Brack and he'll tell you what it is.
I advise you not to speak of this either to Judge Brack or to anyone else.
But how could you do anything so unheard of? What put it into your head? What possessed you? Answer me that, huh?
I did it for your sake, George.
For my sake?
This morning when you told me about what he had read to you.
Yes, what then?
You acknowledged that you envied him his work.
Oh, of course I didn't mean that literally.
No matter. I could not bear the idea that anyone should throw you into the shade.
Hedda, oh, is this true? But I never knew you to show your love like that before. Fancy that.
Well, I may as well tell you, just at this time. No, you can ask Aunt Julia. She will tell you fast enough.
Oh, I almost think I understand you, Hedda. Great heavens, do you really mean it, huh?
Don't shout so, the servant might hear.
Oh, the servant? Why, how absurd you are, Hedda. It's only old Berta. Why, I'll tell Berta myself.
Oh, it is killing me. It is killing me, all this.
What is it, Hedda, huh?
All this absurdity, George.
Absurdity? Do you see anything absurd in my being overjoyed at the news? But after all, perhaps I had better not say anything to Berta.
Oh, why not that too?
No, not yet. But I must certainly tell Aunt Julia. And then that you have begun to call me George, too. Fancy that. Oh, Aunt Julia will be so happy. So happy.
When she hears that I have burnt out Labaude's manuscript? For your sake?
No, by the by. That affair of the manuscript, of course, nobody must know about that. But that you love me so much, Hedda. Aunt Julia must really share my joy in that. I wonder now whether this sort of thing is usual in young wives, huh?
I think you had better ask Aunt Julia that question too.
I will indeed some time or other. And yet, the manuscript. Good God. It is terrible to think what will become of poor Eilert now.
Mrs. Elstead enters, greets them hurriedly, and says in evident agitation,
Oh, dear Hedda, forgive my coming again.
What is the matter with you, Thea?
Something about Eilert Labborg again, huh?
Yes, I am dreadfully afraid that misfortune has happened to him.
Ah, do you think so?
Why, good Lord, what makes you think that, Mrs. Elfsted?
I heard them talking of him at my boarding house, just as I came in. Oh, the most incredible rumors are afloat about him today.
Yes, fancy. So I heard too, and I can bear witness that he went straight home to bed last night. Fancy that.
Well, what did they say at the boarding house?
Oh, I couldn't make out anything clearly. Either they knew nothing definite, or else they stopped talking when they saw me, and I didn't dare ask.
We must hope that you misunderstood them, Mrs. Elfsted.
No. I'm sure it was of him they were talking, and I heard something about the hospital, or...
The hospital?
No, surely that cannot be.
Oh, I was in such a mortal terror. I went to his lodgings and asked for him there.
You could make up your mind to that, Thayer?
What else could I do? I really couldn't bear the suspense no longer.
But you didn't find him either, eh?
No, and the people knew nothing about him. He hasn't been home since yesterday afternoon, they said.
Yesterday? Fancy, how could they say that?
Oh, I am sure something terrible must have happened to him.
Hedda, dear, how would it be if I were to go and make inquiries?
No, don't you mix yourself up in this affair.
Judge Bratt enters with his hat in his hand. He looks grave and bows in silence.
Oh, is that you, my dear Judge?
Yes, it was imperative I should see you this evening.
I can see you have heard the news about Aunt Rena.
Yes, that among other things.
Isn't it sad?
Well, my dear Tessman, that depends on how you look at it.
Has anything else happened?
Yes.
Anything sad, Judge Brack?
That, too, depends on how you look at it, Mrs. Tessman.
Oh, is it something about Eilert Labborg?
What makes you think that, madam? Perhaps you have already heard something.
No, nothing at all, but...
Oh, for heaven's sakes, tell us.
Well, I regret to say, Eilert Lovborg has been taken to the hospital. He is lying at the point of death.
Oh, God. Oh, God.
To the hospital? And at the point of death?
So soon, then.
And we parted in anger. Hedda!
Thea, be careful.
I must go to him. I must see him alive.
It is useless, madam. No one will be admitted.
Oh, at least tell me what has happened to him. What is it?
You don't mean to say that he has... himself, huh?
Yes, I am sure he has.
Unfortunately, you have guessed quite correctly, Mrs. Tessman.
Oh, how horrible.
Himself, then. Fancy that.
Shot himself.
Rightly guessed again, Mrs. Tessman.
When did it happen, Mr. Brack?
This afternoon, between 3 and 4.
But good Lord, where did he do it, huh?
Where? Well, I suppose at his lodgings.
No, that cannot be, for I was there between 6 and 7.
Well then, somewhere else. I don't know exactly. I only know that he was found. He had shot himself in the breast.
Oh, how terrible that he should die like that.
Was it in the breast?
Yes, as I told you.
Not in the temple?
In the breast, Mrs. Chestnut.
Well, the breast is a good place, too.
How do you mean, Mrs. Tessman?
Oh, nothing. Nothing.
And the wound is dangerous, you say, eh?
Absolutely mortal. The end has probably come by now.
Yes, I feel it. The end. Oh, Hedda.
But tell me, how have you learnt all this?
Through one of the police, a man I had some business with.
At least a deed worth doing.
Good heavens, Heina, what are you saying?
I say there is beauty in this.
Mrs. Tessman.
Oh, Hedda, how can you talk of beauty in such an act?
Eilert Lovborg has himself made up his account with life. He has had the courage to do the one right thing.
No, you must never think that was how it happened. It must have been in delirium that he did it.
In despair.
That he did not. I am certain of that.
Yes, in delirium, just as when he tore up our manuscript.
The manuscript? Has he torn that up?
Yes, last night.
Oh, Hedda, we shall never get over this.
Very extraordinary.
To think of Aleph going out of the world in this way, and not leaving behind him the book that would have immortalized his name.
Oh, if only it could be put together again.
Yes, if only it could. I don't know what I would not give.
Perhaps it can be, Mr. Tessman.
What do you mean?
Look here. I have kept all the loose notes he used to dictate from.
You have kept them, Mrs. Elvsted?
Yes, I have them here. I put them in my pocket when I left home. Here they still are.
Oh, do let me see them.
But they are in such disorder, all mixed up.
Fancy we could make something out of them after all. Perhaps if we two put our heads together?
Oh, yes. At least let us try.
We will manage it. We must. I will dedicate my life to this task.
You, George, your life?
Yes, or rather all the time I can spare. My own collections must wait in the meantime, Hedda. You understand, I owe this to Eilet's memory.
Perhaps.
And so, my dear Mrs. Elvsted, we will give our whole minds to it. There is no use in brooding over what can't be undone there. We must try to control our grief as much as possible, and...
Yes, Mr. Tessman. I will do the best I can.
Well then, come here. I can't rest until we have looked through the notes. Where shall we sit? Here? No, in there, in the back room. Excuse me, my dear Judge. Come with me, Mrs. Elvsted.
Oh, if only it were possible.
Tessman and Mrs. Elvsted exit into the back room. Hedda crosses to the stove and sits in the armchair. Judge Brack goes up to her.
Oh, what a sense of freedom this gives me, this act of Eilet Labborg's.
Freedom, Mrs. Hedda. Well, of course, it is a release for him.
I mean for me. It gives me a sense of freedom to know that a deed of deliberate courage is still possible in the world, a deed of spontaneous beauty.
My dear Mrs. Hedda.
Oh, I know what you are going to say. For you are a kind of specialist, too. Like, you know.
Eilif Ludborg was more to you than that you are willing to admit to yourself. Am I wrong?
I don't answer such questions. I only know that Eilet Lovborg has had the courage to live his life after his own fashion. And then, the last great act, with its beauty. Ah, that he should have the will and the strength to turn away from the banquet of life so early.
I am sorry, Mrs. Hedda, but I fear I must dispel an amiable illusion.
Illusion?
Which could not have lasted long in any case.
What do you mean?
Eilet Lovborg did not shoot himself voluntarily.
Not voluntarily.
No. The thing did not happen exactly as I told it.
Have you concealed something? What is it?
For poor Mrs. Elvsted's sake, I idealized the facts a little.
What are the facts?
First, that he is already dead.
At the hospital?
Yes, without regaining consciousness.
What more have you concealed?
This. The event did not happen at his lodgings.
Oh, that makes no difference.
Perhaps it may. For I must tell you, Eilet Lovborg was found shot in Mademoiselle Diana's boudoir.
That is impossible, Judge Brack. He cannot have been there again today.
He was there this afternoon. He went there, he said, to demand the return of something which they had taken from him. Talked wildly about a lost child.
Ah, so that is why.
I thought probably he meant his manuscript, but now I hear he destroyed that himself. So I suppose it must have been his pocketbook.
Yes, no doubt. And there he found it?
Yes, there. When a pistol in his breast pocket discharged, the ball had lodged in a vital part.
In his breast, yes.
No. In his bowels.
That too? Oh, what a curse is it that makes everything I touch turn ludicrous and mean.
There is one point more, Mrs. Hedda. Another disagreeable feature in the affair.
And what is that?
The pistol he carried.
Well, what of it?
He must have stolen it.
Stolen it? That is not true. He did not steal it.
No other explanation is possible. He must have stolen it.
Tessman and Mrs. Elfstead enter.
Hedda dear, it is almost impossible to see under that lantern there. Think of that.
Yes, I am thinking.
Would you mind our sitting at your writing table,
If you like. No, wait. Let me clear it first.
Oh, you needn't trouble, Hedda. There is plenty of room.
No, let me clear it, I say. I will take these things and put them on the piano.
Hedda has drawn out an object covered with sheet music from under the bookcase, places several other pieces of music upon it, and carries all of it into the inner room to the left. Tessman lays the scraps of paper on the writing table and moves the lamp there from the corner table. He and Mrs. Elfstead sit down and proceed with their work. Hedda returns.
Well, my sweet Thea, how goes it with Alet Lubborg's monument?
Oh, it will be terribly hard to put in order.
We must manage it. I'm determined, and arranging other people's papers is just the work for me.
Hedda goes over to the stove and seats herself on one of the footstools. Brack stands over her.
What did you say about the pistol?
Bet he must have stolen it.
Why stolen it?
Because every other explanation ought to be impossible, Mrs. Hedda.
Indeed.
Of course, Eilert Lovborg was here this morning, was he not?
Yes.
Were you alone with him?
Part of the time.
Did you not leave the room whilst he was here?
No.
Try to recollect. Were you not out of the room a moment?
Yes, perhaps just a moment. Out in the hall.
And where was your pistol case during that time?
I had it locked up in...
Well, Mrs. Hedda?
The case stood there on the writing table.
Have you looked since to see whether both pistols are there?
No.
Well, you need not. I saw the pistol found in Lubborg's pocket, and I knew it at once as the one I had seen yesterday, and before, too.
Have you it with you?
No, the police had it.
What will the police do with it?
Search till they find the owner.
Do you think they will succeed?
No, HEDDA GABLER. Not as long as I say nothing.
And if you do not say nothing? What then?
There is always the possibility that the pistol was stolen.
Death rather than that.
People say such things, but they don't do them.
And supposing the pistol was not stolen,
and the owner is discovered, what then?
Then comes the scandal.
The scandal?
Yes, the scandal, of which you are so mortally afraid. You will, of course, be brought before the court, both you and Mademoiselle Diana. She will have to explain how the thing happened, whether it was an accidental shot or murder. Did the pistol go off as he was trying to take it out of his pocket to threaten her with? Or did she tear the pistol out of his hand and shoot him and push it back into his pocket? That would be quite like her, for she is an able-bodied young person, this same Mademoiselle Diana.
But I have nothing to do with all this repulsive business.
No, but you will have to answer the question. Why did you give Eilert the pistol? And what conclusions will people draw from the fact that you did give it to him?
It is true. I did not think of that.
Well, fortunately, there is no danger, so long as I say nothing.
Till I am in your power, Judge Brack. You have me at your beck and call from this time forward.
Dearest Hedda, believe me. I shall not abuse my advantage.
I am in your power, none the less. subject to your will and your demands. A slave. A slave, then. No, I cannot endure the thought of that. Never.
People generally get used to the inevitable.
Yes, perhaps.
Hedda moves away from Brack to join Tessman and Mrs. Elfsted.
Well, are you getting on, George?
Heaven knows, dear. In any case, it will be the work of months.
Fancy that. Doesn't it seem strange to you there? Here are you sitting with Tessman, just as you used to sit with Eilert Labborg.
If I could only inspire your husband in the same way.
Oh, that will come too, in time.
Yes, do you know, Hedda, I really think I begin to feel something of the sort. But won't you go and sit with Brack again?
Is there nothing I can do to help you two?
No, nothing in the world. I trust to you to keep Hedda company, my dear Brack.
With the very greatest of pleasure.
Thanks, but I am tired this evening. I will go in and lie down on the sofa.
Yes, do, dear Hedda.
Hedda goes into the back room and draws the curtains. There is a short pause. Suddenly she is heard playing a wild dance on the piano.
Oh, what is that?
Tessman runs to the doorway.
Why, my dearest Hedda, don't play dance music tonight. Just think about Rena, and the violet, too.
And of Aunt Julia? And of all the rest of them? After this, I will be quiet.
It's not good for her to see us at this distressing work. I'll tell you what, Mrs. Elfsted. You shall take the empty room at Aunt Julia's, and then I will come over in the evenings, and we will sit and work there, huh?
I hear what you are saying, Tessman. But how am I to get through the evenings out here?
Oh, I dare say Judge Bratt will be so kind as to look in now and then, even though I am out.
Every blessed evening with all the pleasure in life, Mrs. Tessman. We shall get on capitally together, we two.
Yes. Don't you flatter yourself. We will, Judge Brack, now that you're the one cock in the basket.
A shot is heard. Tessman, Mrs. Elfsted, and Brack leap to their feet.
Oh, now she is playing with her pistols again.
Tessman throws back the curtains, revealing Hedda stretched on the sofa, lifeless.
Shot herself! Shot herself in the temple! Fancy that!
Good God! People don't do such things.